looking at this particular theme, we wanted to find out who we're focusing on. So we wanted to clarify that we're looking at pre-startups, startups, existing small businesses, and the local community. So we were in charge for looking at the spaces and places of enterprises, and all kinds of enterprises have general needs. For example, they need space to hot desk, for meetings, conference, networking, that's both physical and online. The space has to have IT support, maybe a good city centre location, lots of mentoring advice, preferably low cost for our pre-startups, startup space themselves, and for other space for existing small businesses and workshops. But then, of course, there are specific spaces as well that are required. These could be prototyping, R&D. Some enterprises might need a street presence, other spaces mightn't. And then there are sectoral spaces required as well for the various industries, such as catering, IT, like engineering, etc. But we also kind of thought that enterprise happens everywhere and in every place. You can have some guy in Starbucks hot desking working on his business. You can have a guy in his garage designing some app. You can have a guy in his houseboat, maybe, someone in his live-work unit, someone already established an enterprise hub, or someone actually using the city's free Wi-Fi just to use some of these apps. But we thought there were some particular spatial issues for enterprise units, and these revolved around maybe the diversity of space that they require. A common issue is maybe the length of lease, that they require maybe just leases for maybe a month or two, or up to 6 months maybe for pop-up units, that currently perhaps is quite inflexible for them to work. Spaces need to be flexible, so perhaps they could expand and contract as their business grows or contracts without maybe having to move. There are sectoral requirements behind that space, maybe for the food industry, there's more hygiene regulations required for those. The size and location is also important for them. So for startups and pre-startups and small businesses, we thought sometimes there's an unclear path as to how they find these spaces. And we also thought there's maybe inadequate networking and communication between existing enterprise hubs and spaces in Dublin. We found out, we were a bit surprised that maybe between, say, the Digital Hub and the Liffey Trust and the Peer Street Enterprise Centres, that they don't actually communicate very much between themselves. Maybe internally the startups communicate, but not so much with each other. And then the costs behind these spaces. This could be the space to rent, the fit-out costs, which can be substantial, the facilities themselves that are provided, mentoring and advertising. So the first solution we thought was to provide an online support mechanism, and this maybe follows on from the previous presentation of Start Dublin. And this is where we have an online portal that would have units or businesses that would advertise short-term space to let. So this isn't like your normal long-term 6 or 10 years. This is for businesses that may have a gap of up to, say, 6 months, for example, and they're happy for a startup unit or a pop-up unit to take that over for a while. There could be discounts available as well. For example, it's a very basic fit-out that they could just come in and paint it themselves, and discounts could be negotiated like that. On this website as well, there could be just things like meeting rooms. You could have a guy he's got his own business, but he conducts all his business through his phone and doesn't need an actual office, but he does occasionally need meeting rooms. We heard that Bank of Ireland have offered, they have their own meeting space now, a conference room that their clients or their business customers can use. So why can't the city be full of these meeting rooms that you can, if you want a meeting room for 4 people or 10 people or 20 people, that you can easily find on this website. Then it, of course, has traditional links to existing networks or enterprise spaces in the city, and you can click on those and get their information. And lastly, we particularly want to have an online forum, and on this is where I think other presentations spoke about this. This is where you hear the other startup stories from other businesses, that sharing experience like we had in the first statement. Those 5 panelists who told us maybe the difficulties that they had and what they would share to other people. But what's particular with this online forum, we feel this would be managed like an organisation like the Leos, because there are maybe other online forums like boards.ie, but anyone can post up on that. So for this particular forum, we feel that it has to be managed in some way, that it has to be registered or recognised or in some way associated with the LEOs, that the advice and membership you're getting is actually from people who know the system. The second part of this particular proposal is the connecting space. I mentioned previously that there's all these enterprise spaces in Dublin, but they don't really talk to each other very much. I see Ruth laughing down there. So what we're proposing is that we have a launch day. So this is for every 3 months. It might actually start here in the Woodley venue right where we're sitting. That it starts here that all the startup businesses come together. There's a launch event, so maybe it's something like a Pecha Kucha, like this very event here. We just talk for 5 minutes. This is my business. This is what I do, and it gives me a platform to advertise myself out. And so if you have maybe 20 or 30 other small businesses who are starting up, or they've got their existing business and got a new service or product they want to advertise, it gives them an opportunity to meet other people, because starting a business can be a lonely process. So it's about getting those people together, celebrating the fact that they're out there, creating a community and sharing their experiences. And you might find a baker, for example, when it goes down to Pearse Street or the Liffey Trust, that a guy from the digital hub has got his skills in digital marketing, is just out of his business. He needs a startup baker who needs those services as well. So it's creating these networks between the enterprise centres, between the LEOs and between DCC itself, because we think it's important that DCC regularly interacts with these startups. Also as well, just on the side, we thought that for publicity purposes, that perhaps like the Irish Times could run a feature every 3 months on these startups. So this is a way for them to get free advertising and publicity, that within this magazine there could be a supplement, and they would detail all the startup businesses and the services they provide. So the management, we felt that this new LEO structure, I think this was alluded to a bit in the previous presentation as well, but we felt that they could manage this website. They could create a database of enterprise space that's available for short-term lets in the city. It could have information on size, location, the sectoral type, the facilities it provides, the length of leases, for example, for pop-ups and vacant shop units, and again the moderation of the discussion forums. As I mentioned previously, we felt that they could organise and set up this launch day and help to network the enterprise units themselves in the city to get together to run this space. And also as well, we wanted to propose a new kind of RAS-SAS, and this is, I suppose, following on from DCC's rental accommodation scheme. For those of you who may be familiar, this is where DCC houses some of our tenants in our, maybe on rent supplements as well, in private housing. They could be in housing or apartments. But could we adopt that same idea for business? So we've got a startup accommodation scheme. So maybe instead of a pop-up space, you've got a pop-up enterprise space. So you could take over an empty floor of an office block for maybe 3-5 years, negotiate the rents for maybe 5 years, so you get a discount, and then the LEOs then, or GCC, sublet those spaces then for short-term leases for startup small businesses. And for those people who may be extremely cash poor, we thought as well that as part of building the community with those people in those kind of RAS-SAS units, they could provide classes, advice, or mentoring, or lend equipment or facilities to maybe some of the startup businesses or schools or educational facilities in the area. So we don't want startups to come along and just taking from these enterprise spaces. We want them to give back as well to the units and to the wider community. So to conclude, enterprise spaces and places, it's a space to help grow and support enterprise, to go from startup to grown-up. We're connecting physical space through online supports, discussion forums, advice, and knowledge sharing. We're creating a launch day to celebrate startups and get them networked, communicating, getting free advertising, and hopefully grow their businesses and the local economy. Thank you.